Welcome to the Consciousness Anywhere and Everywhere podcast. I am Shannon O'Hara, and I invite you to a completely new world of possibilities.
Hello, I'm Shannon O'Hara, and welcome to the Consciousness Anywhere podcast. So I myself have been an entrepreneur and business generator and creator for about 15 years now. And in that time, I have personally grown up a lot. I have grown a robust, dynamic business and witnessed along the path many of the ways in which conscious economics functions versus the economics of this reality or the business methodology of this reality. And I thought it was worth noting and exploring and clarifying what I mean. For any and all of you that are out there who have struggled with business or have a sense that you are in direct conflict with what you want to create and how the world is going, if you have been in conflict with money, because money is obviously a huge part of business and part of economics, although not the entire measure of economics. So what do I mean by conscious economics, first and foremost? I have previous podcast episodes on the economy of consciousness and also video series dedicated to money education that will all be linked below. So if you want to get more into that, please check those resources out. Consciousness, as defined by Gary Douglas, who is my father and also the founder and creator of something called Access Consciousness, which is, full disclosure, a lot of where I first observed the functionality of the economy of consciousness working and happening. And I'm going to talk more about that throughout this particular first episode. He defines consciousness as the inclusion of everything and the judgment of nothing. I personally love this definition of consciousness, for it is actually remarkably weirdly tricky to get a concise and encompassing definition of consciousness if you look in a dictionary. Obviously, consciousness is conceptual to some people and a debatable topic. However, the definition of consciousness as the inclusion of everything and the judgment of nothing lends itself to a far more cooperative mindset just to begin with. Economics is also a terminology that you will see a ranging spectrum of definitions of. So I'm going to put forth my most recent concise definition of economics, which is essentially the study of how sociology, so people's behavior, affects monetary markets, resources, and commodities. So there's sociology, which is the study of people and behavior, social behavior, and how that then impacts money markets is economy. Obviously, that's a very generalized, very simplified definition of economics. However, you should know depending on how much you know about economics or not, there is this interesting stance that economics takes, or people within the economics fields take, that I've heard talked about a lot and I've read about a lot in economic texts and bodies of work, which is the analysis of data to find sort of like the secret hidden answers and patterns that will, within behavior, people's behavior, that will then reveal some very crucial bit of information about how to get that cutting edge on a money market, or how to influence markets based on the correct analysis of infinite seas of data. So, that is this reality's definition and version of economics. The economy of consciousness, as coined by me and defined by me, is the recognition, first and foremost, of the elements and commodities of consciousness, and then how to utilize those in a business capacity. So to the recognition of the elements and commodities of consciousness are things like ease is a commodity of consciousness. A commodity in this reality would be information, or a resource like water, or something that somebody finds of value. And the reason why the commodities or the elements of that make up the economy of consciousness are hardly ever valued is because it's very difficult to monetize them. And they are weirdly disregarded as being of no value. And something that like ease, for example, is ease something that you were raised to value? Or is ease something that you were raised to avoid because it was of no value because only working hard was the way you justified everything that you earned? So that's a really good first differentiation between the economy of consciousness and the economy or the economics of this reality, which is that ease, is ease a valid methodology for production and creation? And I posit, yes, it is, because I have been using that methodology of conscious economics effectively for over a decade and watched it yield. Versus the economy of this reality or the sociology of this reality, which communicates that working hard is the only valid measure of justified success. Oh, I had to work really hard for it, or it came too easy to them. Somehow it came too easy to them devalues the accomplishment. So you can see how one of the primary elements of conscious economics, or one of the resources of consciousness, which is ease, is universally disregarded and devalued. So when you are somebody who is seeking more consciousness or wants to have an easier life, we come up against this very palpable psychological wall where people are actively invalidating the resources and the commodities of consciousness and looking for the value, the rightness, and the relevance of the economy of this reality. That's the very first step or cornerstone or building block in the business school of conscious economics, is to get out of that mindset, to question where you've bought particular points of view about how things have to be accomplished, what is of value, so that you can start implementing, utilizing, and applying the principles and the resources of consciousness in an economic business sense. I first sort of cognitized this difference, that there was this other economy that was occurring all around me and all around everybody that nobody was talking about. And really nobody was, except for maybe my father, who probably worked a lot of this stuff out, but I'm now codifying it into a more of a step-by-step school model. I observed the economy of consciousness working in the business that he was building and that I watched him build from ground zero. So he started the business of access consciousness when I would have been 13, 14. I'm not actually sure when he officially filed the name, Access Consciousness. It has evolved, of course, as businesses do. But he started this business when I was pretty young, and he stayed steady with it. And I watched him build it and develop it over decades. So I got to really see firsthand the impact that this business was having on him. I got to see how it was impacting financially, where we started from as a family financially before this business he started, and then where what he generated and created monetarily from that business over the decades. But one of the things that I really identified that opened my eyes to the reality of that there is another economy occurring, is that I watched people that he employed from really early on. I watched their lives, like those people's lives grew and flourished and expanded to the point where their beings, like they were a completely different person essentially than when they started working with the business of access consciousness. Not in a creepy way, in a incredibly enlivening way, where a lot of the people that would come to start working with my dad's business would have, judgments of themselves, financial limitations, not a tremendous sense of self-confidence, etc. People, us, life, imagine, your stuff. And then I watched them working in the business, either as, accountants or managers or event coordinators or all of the different positions, that go into running a business. And some of them were in the business for a really long time. So there was a really long track record of observation, right? Gathering of data, of observing these people, and myself included. I'm included in this, although slightly different, because I wasn't really an employee of my dad's business. I just watched the business, and then I created my own mini-me business based on his model. So I recognized that not only were these people making more money than they'd ever made in any other job and having more of a sense of financial peace, which, by the way, is a commodity of consciousness. They were having more financial peace than they were in the beginning, but they were also happier and had a greater sense of their being. And I was like, whoa, okay. So yes, the business is having a financial impact on people's lives, but it's also having this other impact where these people are earning these other commodities or elements or energies, whatever you want to call them, that were relevant and life improving. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, because how many of you guys have ever had a job, or worked in somebody else's business, or even maybe had your own business, but you didn't have a sense that your life was growing in that job or in that business? That is a all too familiar story. So seeing that people's lives and bank accounts could expand based on working in this particular kind of business, and the business I'm referring to is my father's business, I realized, and by the time I realized this, I had also been a business owner and runner of my own business for probably 10 years. So I had enough firsthand experience of watching how particular choices that I made in business, how they either expanded everybody's life that worked in the business or created more difficulty and separation or conflict within the business. And it took me a long time to work out what I was doing because, frankly, I started running my own business quite young, and I am an art school dropout. So I find it endlessly amusing that I would facilitate a course and curriculum called the Business School of Conscious Economics. Fact of the matter is, I'm an autodidact, and I have taught myself a lot of these principles and practices. I've learned a lot of them from my father, but I've also been able to achieve a huge amount of financial capability and empowerment through the business that I know a lot of people are looking for. And that the creation of that kind of business, the creation of a business that functions within the economy of consciousness, starts with the CEO or the owner's points of view. And we are, all of us, living on the planet right now amongst hundreds and thousands of businesses, including countries that are now corporations, that we are firsthand witnessing how these businesses are diminishing the whole, creating an unsustainable business practice, not only for the planet, but for the people that work within that business. There is such a greater way to create. And this is not to be mistaken as idealism or being a utopian dreaming idiot. And this is also, I am also not indicating that a business within the economy of consciousness is a B corporation or is better at recycling or, is giving a lot of money to charity or philanthropy. That's also not what I mean, although it could include that. What I'm indicating is that the point of view or the consciousness or lack of consciousness of the person at the helm of the business or the board at the helm of the business has a huge impact and completely dictates if that business is going to flourish in the economy of consciousness and in return contribute to the whole, or if that business is going to diminish the whole and only allow a select few to flourish. Have you ever wanted to create but didn't want to get into the rat race of constantly doing, having to, file taxes, having to do all this stuff that is part of business? And so what I am intending to teach and educate about in the Business School of Conscious Economics is how all of these aspects of business, what kind of product or service are you selling? Because that's what a business does. It sells products and services. What kind of product and service are you selling? And is that product or service creating the world you want to live in? Do you know how to hire people that will expand the business and contribute to the whole? There's this adage, good help is hard to find, and that I have found to be true, and I have also found that it is totally possible to find incredible people who greatly underestimate themselves, who are incredible contributions, and who will receive the gift that your business is, and in return, gift of their expertise, their knowledge, their energy, their know-how, their capability. Are you looking for people who follow orders, or are you looking for people who can self-lead, think for themselves, work autonomously, contribute in ways that you might not be able to define or quantify yet? Do you want people you can control? Do you want people that are less than you in your business? Or could you be looking for people who are better at certain things than you? This is another aspect of the Business School of Conscious Economics. Are you looking for people to work in the business with you in a way that includes all and judges none? Or are you looking for people that you can control? FYI, controlling people is very difficult and probably not the best use of your energy. Then there's the whole marketing or promoting aspect of business, which is a whole university course unto itself. There is a stance of the business school of this reality, which is, you want to find a pain to solve for your customer, right? That selling to the pain is a dynamic way to get customers. So essentially, you have to be catering to people's pain, which is something I could never do. Instead, I invite people to what's possible. And I have found that to be a very effective, very valid form of marketing and promotion. And then there's the aspect of accounting. Whether you know it or not, I do not have firsthand experience of this, but I have learned that Accounting 101 is one of the first courses that people take when they go to business school. And what does that tell you about business school? Does that tell you that they're encouraging creation? Or they're teaching people how to quantify and analyze as though that's the first, foremost, and most important aspect of business? And it isn't. Businesses must be created. So there's a whole interesting conversation about accounting. Now, I am a lifelong dyslexic and somebody who was not raised in a household by parents that did any accounting, and I had to learn if accounting was valuable for me, which i.e. it is, but then also how I wanted to utilize that information. And accounting can be used in so many different ways. It can be used for tax compliance, but it can also be used to inform you, right? So this is where the analyzing data economics part becomes part of the equation. And there's an interesting thing that a lot of businesses do, or business owners do, where they want to analyze data. They want to get their, data analyzed by their accountant before they'll make particular business choices. Like if we, put 2% less chocolate in our chocolate bars, how is that going to impact the bottom line or the outcome of the, chocolate candy bar business in 10 years, right? Just an example. Whereas a business in the economy of consciousness isn't looking for the answer in a spreadsheet. The CEO or the conscious leader of a business in the economy of consciousness is following the energy. They are following their knowing, even if they do not have data to substantiate their inspirations, ideas, and targets. So accounting can be used for really cool feedback about what particular products are working in your business or what particular business choices are creating. And if you base all of your choices on numbers, you are excluding a huge amount of energy that would and could contribute to the business. So, first aspect of this conversation is exploring, questioning, changing the points of view, the belief systems of the CEO or the conscious leader of any business, right? That's where you have to start. You have to look at, what am I doing this business for? That's going to initially dictate if your business, or if any business, is going to extrapolate in to the economy of consciousness, which, by the way, is amazing, or if the business is going to be burdened with the business model and economy of this reality, which is based tremendously on competition, lack, effort, and loss. So first, the point of view, the core fundamental belief system of the CEO has to be questioned or discovered. What are you doing this business for? Like, what is this business for? Then staff, dealing with people, which if any of you guys are in business or are looking at creating a business, you know that if for any business to grow, you have to include people. Otherwise, like literally you cannot. If you have a business that has one employee, that business can only get so big. So in order for there to be growth, there has to be inclusion of others. And that's a whole great conversation and an incredible skill set that I had to learn. It was the hardest thing I have ever learned in life, actually, was how to work with people in business. No joke. And I'm happy to report that there are fabulous ways of making that work for everybody, literally, including you. Then there is the marketing, i.e. sales aspect of business. that most businesses have to participate in. And is accounting a superpower or a source of stupidity for you? And one piece I forgot to add earlier when I was recording this episode for you guys is tax structure. The circle or the cycle of business is invitation, right? Inspiration, inviting people to the business, absorbing their money, their information, filtering that energy in the form of money and information through your systems that are a crucial component of any well-oiled and efficient business, through the systems of the website, the merchant processor, the database, and then taking that energy then continues to flow on through the accounting systems and into your tax structure. And tax structure is obviously a vital component of any business and an area of hot debate and a topic that I have spent 10 years studying, practicing, implementing, and really digging out my unique business structure and personal tax structure to be able to have my money flow through legal tax structures that then spit clean money out the other side that then cycles into what else you'd like to create, whether that's investing it back in the business or investing in creating, contributing to the life, living the reality, the world that you would like to live in. I really resisted and reacted to taxes for a long time until I realized that everything in the whole must contribute. Everything in the whole is contributed to, and everything in the whole must contribute. That's how ecology works. Nature, nothing in nature that isn't sustainable, i.e., it either can't contribute or it can't be contributed to by the whole. Nothing in nature survives unless it is contributing and contributed to. Everything in nature is interconnected so exquisitely and mind-blowingly dynamically. Science has not even begun to scratch the surface of the interconnectedness of everything. When I realized that, it really changed my point of view about taxes and my choice around taxes and the way I treated money in general. It no longer was about having to protect or hide or save or keep money. It was about, okay, how do I create, where is the way to implement a tax structure for the business and for me personally that's efficient and will work with me to contribute to the world that I want to live in. I hope that you've enjoyed some of this conversation. I know that it's probably sparked a ton of questions in a lot of your guys' universes, and that is the intention of this podcast, is to touch on these fascinating topics that deeply need to be excavated for each and every one of you that knows that something else is possible, but literally nobody's teaching it, nobody's talking about it. In fact, there's a huge amount of invalidation that goes into the relevance of anybody who wants to use conscious economic principles for the growth of monetary markets, life and living quality, and the inclusion of all and judgment of nothing.
Thank you for listening to this show. My target is to make consciousness easy to find and choose. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review on iTunes and share this with somebody who you know who might be looking for more consciousness in their life. You can visit me on shannon-o'hara.com or talktotheentities.com. And to learn more about the amazing tools of Access Consciousness, you can visit accessconsciousness.com and be sure to subscribe to the podcast.